It's Sophia, and welcome back to another episode of Styles After Dark. You guys, I can't even wait. Today's episode is going to be so incredible. And the reason I say that is because I am going to share my testimony. I'm going to share what brought me to God, what brought me to my Christianity, and how that has changed my life for the better, how it has shaped me into a better person. And it is truly so powerful. And I feel like I just had to say that right in the beginning before we get all to the fun stuff. This episode is going to be very vulnerable. This episode is going to be something I'm sharing that is so sacred and personal to me. I hope that this finds the right crowd. I hope that this finds the right person, the right people. Um, Hopefully, someone who's been searching for answers, searching for a sign, looking for God, looking for love. You're in the right place. Big intro today. My name is Sophia. If you're new here, this is a podcast where I want people to feel seen and heard. We are not perfect at Styles After Dark. We just try to learn from our mistakes and be better than yesterday. Also, just throwing it out there, being Christian and believing in God and having religion doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you don't have bad days or that you don't react or do things that might not be quote unquote Christian. We're all sinners at the end of the day. And I don't know why. I just feel like I had to say that because I think that's a big misconception is you see someone who goes to church and you see someone goes who has God in their life and is like preaching Christianity. And I feel like people who aren't typically that deep in their faith or have that big of a relationship with God or into a religion just laugh at people who do because they're like, oh, well, they said this or they gave me attitude or 3 years ago they did this or when I met her, she was this way. And it's like, if you knew God and if you actually got to know what Christianity is, you would know that it's not about being perfect and it's not about being this whole kind person and that everyone's walk and journey is completely different. Everyone's at a different place with their relationship with God. And yeah, I don't know. That's my opening. Okay, so before we get into my journey, my testimony, and how I found God, we're going to be doing the drink of the week. I found this brand at Whole Foods and I had to try it. It's called Half Day and it says good for your gut. I One of my favorite drinks all time is sweet tea. I have yet to try a sweet tea from a brand for the drink of the week and we're going to try it because this is my all-time favorite beverage. I give it a 7 out of 10, only because it's kind of tastes like sweet tea lemonade. And I signed up for sweet tea, not sweet tea lemonade. My testimony has been something that I have been wanting to share with you guys on my channel and on my Spotify and on my podcast in so long. I just felt like I wasn't really ready. And for me, some things are about timing, not always, but very heavy and special things. I think it's about being in the right place to share information. And I feel at a place with my faith very strongly where I can open up about the journey and what led me to my Christianity. This road of finding God and who I was before Him is insane. And it's filled with a past and how we got here. Because I wasn't someone who grew up with religious parents. I wasn't someone who grew up with people who forced religion on me. And for that, I'm actually pretty grateful. I feel like sometimes a lot of people shine away from religion and they end up getting a really nasty taste about who God is or Christians or any religion, it's not even Christianity, but because it was forced on them or because it was coming from a place of judgment, not people who were accepting, controlling with it. And yeah, I would be scared too. So for that reason, I'm so happy that that was never the case. But also, I missed out on the relationship with God and building that relationship with God up until I was 22. If you know me from my past, and if you know, which we're going to get into, and if you know who I was, or if you're even the people in my life now, my family, my best friends, like they see how much I've changed in such a short period of time. Like like some people, it takes 10 years to make those changes. For me, it happened within a year and a half. And I do think that happened by the grace of God, by me finding God, by me solely turning to God after finding myself in such a, a very low place. And slowly I started to learn that God's love is unconditional. Initially, what got me curious back in 2022, it was kind of building up, and I do believe that sometimes God, especially when you don't have him in your life, or currently you're upset with him, or you're mad at him, or you've never had him in your life, I believe God places people sometimes to bring you to him. And I felt like that's what he was doing with me. I had started working in my salon. I've always believed in God, but I was very confused of what that meant. Like, I was never very sure of it. And I definitely wasn't sure of religion. And I grew up Catholic. So I did go to Catholic school and I grew up going to church school. But I was so young. Those things you learn at like 7, 8 years old, like they never really stuck with me. I had my first communion at about 8 or 9 years old, and after that, I didn't continue. I would go to church maybe once every few years with my grandparents. I started going to cosmetology school. I graduated. I went to my salon that I worked at for 5 years. I was working at Mosaic Salon and Boutique, and slowly but surely, life started happening while I was working there. I was going through things. I was going through family things. Um, I w- First I was driving my little Toyota Yaris, and I had it break down on me. I needed a new battery. I got a needle in my tire. Um, and what's funny is through those things, I started seeing generosity of people that I worked with. And to me, that was so unfamiliar. Um, and I'll get to that in a second, but I just want to focus on the generosity I received from people I worked with and people who I wasn't close to that I worked with. They didn't owe me anything. They didn't owe me a ounce of kindness or anything. And I would go through these things and they would really show up for me. I mean, I had one of my coworkers' husbands help me out one time with my tire and my battery. I had the owner, like, while he was working and he had like a 15-minute slot break in between haircuts, go to where my car was and get it jumped. And I had people asking me for the first time in my life, like, remembering the things I would share with them and asking me later, like, how it was going, and truly caring about the things I was going through. Kindness and generosity from strangers was so surprising to me, and I wasn't used to it. What I started to realize as I got to know my colleagues and my peers and my coworkers is that pretty much each and every one of those people that would help me through hardships or just silly things, just life things like changing a battery, having a flat tire, is that they all had faith and they all had Jesus and they all had God and they all either were a Christian or a Mormon or something. And there was that pattern of them having such a kind heart and being giving. And I think that is truly what started to get me curious. You know, earlier I brought up my upbringing, so I kind of want to touch on that before we get to me actually discovering God and going to church for the first time. You know, my parents had me very young. They had me at 15 or 16 years old. My parents were kids when they had me. And also, my parents' parents were also kids when they had them. And, you know, I'm Hispanic, my family is Mexican, and a lot of the culture and the upbringing that I had was very like old school. And from my grandparents, at least, parents learned from them and had their own upbringings with my grandparents. And this isn't to shame my family. In fact, I love my family. I have such amazing relationships with my family. And this is, we're talking about the past. And as I was growing up, what my household looked like and what my relationships looked like within my family. And I'm just going to put it out there as well that that has happened and transformed through the grace of God and through forgiveness. There was a lot of instability in my home. There was a lot of toxicity. There was a lot of, you know, I was brought up around a lot of different uncles and aunts and people who battled with addiction, people who battled with anger issues, people who battled with toxic relationships in front of me. And I grew up just seeing a lot of negativity, a lot of toxicity. And that does something to a kid, a child, a teenager, not being raised in a stable, healthy household. Again, my parents tried their best. They did their best. And when you have that young of parents, they are also just figuring life out too. And I'm not defining them under any of those circumstances. But like I said, I was surrounded by a lot of family members and was jumping through a lot of different households. The things that I have gone through, I early on developed characteristics like no confidence, having a lot of anger at a very young age, dealing with depression at a very young age, dealing with emotional instability, dealing with a lot of triggers. I would say I had a lot of lack of self love. And when you have that and you're a teenage girl, that can really affect how you treat people, how you and your surroundings and your choices and the way you see life, what you think that you deserve as an individual, and not even romantically, but friendship wise too, what you take from people. Being so forgiving sometimes, thinking that you deserve to be treated a certain way, thinking that you deserve to have fake friends, thinking that you deserve to have a guy or a man disrespect you consistently, men treat you disrespectfully consistently, staying with people who cheat on you, disrespect you, lie to you, gaslight you, manipulate you. And this goes again for friendships too. And at this point, I'm just talking in a general sense. There's a lot of choices that happen when you're in that mindset and grow up to start having those kinds of characteristics based off of lack of a, again, healthy household. And again, you know, I'm not being taught these things, I'm not being shown these things. So, what do you attract? You know, a lot of who we are is what we attract. From high school to around 23-ish years old, all I was attracting was people that brought out the worst in me, that brought out the Sophia, I'm so happy I'm not anymore. And I'm not even saying like brought out and blaming them on me, but like when you hang out with the wrong people, when you have people who aren't pushing you to be your best, who are saying, hey, let's go to the club every weekend. Hey, let's drink every weekend. Hey, let's smoke weed all day, every day. Hey, let's talk crap about our friends. Hey, let's judge people. Hey, let's hook up with a bunch of people. It just goes so deep. I just know if I had God at such a younger age and if I had stability and security at a younger age, this would have all been provoked, but I'm not mad about it. I don't regret it. That's the thing is I don't say this and regret my life or regret who I've was throughout those years, but I'm just saying that this might be someone who's listening right now. And I'm sharing this to be vulnerable with you. I believe we all find God one day. I truly believe in that. Whether it's at 10 years old, whether it's at 15, whether it's at 25, whether it's at 36, whether it's at 62, whether it's at 80, or whether it's when you're in the hospital bed. In 2022, I decided to go to church for the first time with an ex that I had at the time. And that was really my first time ever going to a Christian church. I'm going to be full on transparent with you guys. I went in that church that day and it was off. It was weird. I was like, it's very uncomfortable. And especially if you're experiencing it for the first time, you're in a room filled with people who are like singing the words and praising the Lord. And when you're so unfamiliar with that, it can kind of feel very like culty. And that's full transparency. I'm not going to lie. Like, that is truly how I felt the first few times that I was going. And I don't know. It was just, and I stopped going for a little bit, and then my 6-year relationship ended. And I have to say, like, that was my breaking point. I was going through a lot at the time. I had just moved back into my grandma's house. I was going through things that I don't need to share today, but just know that it was a very dark time. The family I'm closest to, they don't live here. I just felt so alone, and I had no other choice because everyone's rock bottom looks different. I was like, there's no way I'm going to get through this without my faith. There's just no way. I started going to church by myself. I started going to church with friends. I started to pray and pray and pray. And I just started to ask for signs and asking God for a sign for this and for that. And that is truly how I know God is real, because every prayer that I had was answered. Every prayer that I made, every sign I asked for was made. And this doesn't happen overnight. So if you're not familiar with prayer, and if you're not familiar with having God in your life, sometimes your prayers don't get answered. Sometimes they don't get answered for a year. But over time, I would find myself and reflect on my prayers and reflect on what I had asked of him. And it was just like everything was slowly coming together. Some of those prayers looked like having good relationships with both of my parents, praying for my family. I'm not going to get emotional right now. No. Praying for my family to heal, praying for closer relationships with people I cared for and loved, giving me patience, praying to heal the things I didn't like about myself, praying for change and wanting to see change in myself and wanting to see change in the things around me, and healing, truthfully healing. But the thing is you can pray and pray, but God doesn't just give you. I mean, sometimes maybe he'll just give it to you, but most of the time you have to work for it. And that's your end of the deed. You pray, but you also have to put in a little work, and he'll deliver. We have episodes to come of me talking about my journey with God, but just know, you guys, that there are unexplainable coincidences that have happened that have proved to me that God is listening and God is hearing. And as time went on, everything became so much better. God works miracles, God answers prayer. And me and my mom have a great relationship now. Me and my dad have a great relationship. Me and my family's doing so much better. My relationships with my friends have evolved, and truly just prayers have been answered. I was in such a dark place for so long. I was drinking and hanging out with the wrong crowd, hanging out with people who only brought, if I'm being honest, bad habits. Like, take a look around. I'm not saying this to change your mind or to force any of my beliefs on anyone who might be listening, but take a look at what your friends invite you to do. Like, are they inviting you to party all the time? Are they inviting you to drink all the time, go to the bars all the time? Are they just inviting you to go get a coffee and like talk about other people and that's all you have and you have like nothing better to do? Do you have people in your life who just treat you not good? Like, why are we in friendships and relationships that make us cry, that put us through ups and downs? And the fact that I normalized that again because I didn't know better. Now I have friends that only brings positive things. Like, we don't have to have the same hobbies. We don't have to like the same things, but I guess at the end of the day, he transformed my life. And I know that I have changed for the better. And I never thought that this would happen. I never thought that I was deserving of a healthy relationship. I never thought that I was deserving and not deserving of friendships who make you feel loved and don't make you question like where you stand with them. I never knew I was deserving of kind people or just a happier, healthier life where I don't drink. I don't need to go to the club every single weekend to be fulfilled. I don't need to stay out late and hang out with the same people from high school to be fulfilled. Again, I'm not saying everyone has to be like me, but for so long, I thought that I had to fit this category of wanting to be that way and wanting to smoke weed all the time to be cool. And but also I was just lying to myself. I'm also not saying like, oh, like I deserve to be treated like crap. No, but like it's so cheesy. I'm just going to say it, but it's like the perfect way to put it. We accept the love that we think we deserve. And when you don't know better, that is what happens. When you invite God into your life, transformations happen. And when you invite God to your life, you just start seeing life differently and you start wanting healthier habits and wanting more peace and knowing that there's so much more to life than all this other weird stuff that I just like didn't want to do anymore. And all this like stuff that was so unfulfilling. Like it was just wasting time. I wasn't actually being like productive or and I had all this anxiety and depression and was wondering why. I mean, you're literally going out to every club every single weekend, staying out till 4 in the morning and then having anxiety and doing it all over again like the next 2 weekends. Like, of course you're not going to be happy. You're literally in a toxic relationship where it's so inconsistent and you keep letting someone disrespect you and make you question who you are over and over again. Like so much has came with this journey and I have to say one of the biggest things has been forgiveness. And I used to be someone who held grudges to the max. And through this testimony, God granted me one of the biggest gifts, which is forgiveness. Forgiveness for myself, forgiveness for my parents, forgiveness for the people I love, forgiveness for those around me, forgiveness for situations that were heavy for me, forgiveness for things that happened years ago and that I need to let go of to be happy, to be weightless, to take that weight off my shoulders. That is one of the biggest gifts I've received through finding God. And because that is what has truly shifted my whole life. I know in our 20s we're supposed to grow. I know that life is about growing and people are constantly changing. Like, I get that that's completely normal, but this is a different kind of change. And like I said earlier, this is also a kind of change that happened so dramatically fast. You can even go look at my first podcast episode just to see how much I changed. Go click on that after this episode and go see how I talked. and how I looked. I try to watch my mouth now. I try to watch how I talk, how I walk, how I treat people, how I talk about situations, how I learn from things. And again, that is all through reading the Bible, worshiping, prayer, and because I found God and I found my Christianity. God's love is unconditional. God's love is loving. God's love is consistent. And I know that some people have this image of judgment. I know people think it's like this religion that is so judgy and controlling and blah, blah, blah. And it's like everyone's relationship with God is different. Start your own journey if you just look for Him because He is always there. No matter where you are, He's always going to be waiting for you. God is eternal. And to close out this testimony and this episode, I am going to close out by reading Romans 8:38. Nothing can separate us from God's love. What shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can be against us? Since He did not spare even His own Son, but gave Him up for us all, won't He also give us everything else? Who dares accuse us whom God has chosen for His own? No one, for God Himself has given us right standing with Himself. Who then will condemn us? No one, for Christ Jesus died for us and was raised to life for us. And He is sitting in the place of honor at God's right hand, pleading for us. Can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean He no longer loves us? And I am convinced that nothing can ever separate us from God's love, neither death nor life, neither angels nor demons, neither our fears for today nor our worries about tomorrow. Not even the powers of hell can separate us from God's love. No power in the sky above or in the earth below. Indeed, nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate us from the love of God that is revealed in Jesus Christ our Lord. And that is all I have to say. To know God is to love God, and to know God is to love you. And God is nothing but love. And I hope this helped someone. And I will leave it at that. Thank you guys for allowing me to share my story and my testimony and be vulnerable as always. If you guys ever want to message me or DM me, you guys totally can. I'm always open ears. And if you want any of the links to my socials, I'll leave that below, in the description below. Remember to hit subscribe and follow if you're on Spotify. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I'll see you guys the Wednesday after next Wednesday. Bye. Mwah.